Hello everyone. Today I've got 3 more fantastic horror books for you guys to check out. And there's a lot of good books coming out this year, but a lot of them you're going to be hearing about, or you're going to have to pre-order, and there's nothing wrong with that. But all 3 of these ones are out right now. So while you're waiting for your big pre-orders to come in, pick up these 3 in the meantime and you will not be disappointed. And you can keep those scares coming. Just a reminder, I have horror books for sale also, and you can find the books you see on your screen along with others at the link in the description. And don't forget to check out my Patreon, where you can get free horror books from me every month and other authors, free short horror stories and other goodies. And there's a link down below where you can check that out as well. All right, let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about today is called Summer of the Monsters. This is, for a creature feature, for a book that has the word monster in the title, you kind of know or think you know what to expect. This one actually really exceeded my expectations of that because it's surprisingly poignant and give you a case of the feels sometimes. And I was not expecting that in a creature feature. But it doesn't skimp on the things you love about a good monster book either. It's still got all the blood and all the gore and all the terror as something unknown coming for people out of the woods. So it's got all that going on, and it's about a girl, and she moves to a new town with her father, and right away she's in she's in high school. And as usual, she'll find a group of bullies, the ones that don't like her for whatever reason, and she'll also make some friends. Well, one day she's walking through the woods after school, taking a shortcut, and she's not supposed to, because people in the area will tell you do not go into the woods ever. There are rumors and folklore about things in the woods, which she doesn't really believe. But one day she's taking that shortcut through the woods, and she meets that group of bullies, these girls who have been picking on her. And they kind of go a little bit too far, and they leave her in a very compromised position in the woods when they hear a sound coming that everybody's familiar with, and they know to run. A click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. And so they kind of leave her there. She falls out of a tree and passes out, but when she wakes up, she's in a nest high up on the trees, and there is a monster sitting in this big nest right next to her. Now here's the thing, this book deals with these horrific creatures in the woods that will kill you horribly. Hunting for them is almost a sport. They just do not like humans. But not all of them are bad. This creature she finds, or that finds her, passed out on the forest floor, he's a good monster, I guess you can say. She decides to name him Samo, and they kind of become friends. We're going to find out some things about these monsters and how Samo is kind of the protector of the woods. He's the one that stops these evil creatures from passing a certain barrier and stopping these other monsters from actually invading the town and just ripping and tearing and massacring the entire population. So he's kind of a protector. And we're going to find out about these monsters. We're going to find out a little bit more about Samo. But at one point, because he's a monster, and there's been a lot of deaths and disappearances and body parts and gore and everything in this town. People don't want to hear about any monster, whether somebody thinks they're good or bad, and this is going to result in an ending that will just, first of all, it'll probably break your heart, but then you're going to realize that by this prejudice that they have toward anything not normal, that they could have just unleashed hell upon their little town, and now nobody might survive. I mean, it's going to get pretty bloody there. Yeah, but this one is great. I always love a good creature feature, and these monsters that we're dealing with, they're not normal. They're not your typical monsters, and you're going to have to read about that. And every time you read that little sound they make in the book, you know, click, clack, click, clack, click, you know something bad is going to happen. Because by the time people hear that sound, it's probably already too late. And you'll have to read about that. But this one is fantastic. It really exceeded my expectations of what a monster or creature feature book could be. I enjoyed the characters. I loved the action. And of course, as I said, it's surprisingly heartfelt. And I enjoyed that as well. I will leave a link down below where you can pick up your copy, and I highly recommend it. And next we have A White Death. If you like your horror, cold, if you like it set in a bleak, icy, frozen area that just gives all this kind of atmosphere to a good horror story, you are going to love this book because it takes place in the Arctic. And the thing about this book is that it really dives into the lifestyle, beliefs, superstitions, and folklore of the indigenous people in the Arctic. And this concerns mainly an Inuit woman back in 1913. And she's not full-blooded Inuit, though. She was left on an ice floe basically by her parents to die, and she never knew who her parents actually were. But a semi-nomadic tribe took her in and raised her as their own. And she grew up to excel in this environment. She took to it, to the point where now nobody really likes her that much inside of her own camp, because she's their best hunter and tracker. And back in 1913, the women didn't like her because you know, gender roles specified that she should be back at camp instead of out hunting, you know, taking care of the camp and everything. And the men didn't like her because she was much better than them, so there was a lot of jealousy involved with them. But she does her best, and she's a really nice person. She tries to get along with everybody, but they just don't seem to like the fact that she's a woman and she's doing this. One day she's on a hunting expedition with some fellow members of her tribe, some fellow men, but they have an ulterior motive. Basically, they beat her to within an inch of her life. They take turns sexually assaulting her. Then they cut off her fingers and throw her in the frozen lake, leaving her for dead. They take these fingers and make necklaces out of them. And when they get back to camp, they tell the camp that she went crazy, that she was actually a witch this whole time, and that they're only wearing the fingers to protect them from this white witch, they call her, because she's not full-blooded. And of course, the people believe it because they all had this kind of side-eyed hatred, no, maybe not hatred, but discomfort with her. So it's easy to believe. However, she didn't die. She goes to live in a cave, and she finds out she's pregnant from this assault. And basically, and that's all I'm going to say about it, because basically this book spans generations of both of those different people. It's a story about tragedy. It's a story about survival, and it's a story about horrific revenge. Because eventually she starts sneaking into their camp from her hidden cave and taking out people one by one in very brutal manners. And she teaches her daughter, and then eventually her granddaughter, and you'll read about how all that came about, to do the same thing. Because until she gets all 5 of those fingers back, she is not going to rest, and she is going to pass on to her bloodline. That's their main goal in life, is to track down the descendants of these men and get those fingers back and kill them. Because the men that had the fingers, they are passing them down to their sons, telling the story which becomes a legend about an infamous white witch in the Arctic. And so you got these two competing factors, and this book is going to span generations of both of them. and their struggles and their deaths sometimes, and how they're dealing with this situation. But that setting is absolutely fantastic. You will feel the cold. You will feel that freezing wind coming across the ice. And let's not forget about the polar bears. Tons of polar bears in this one. And you know, polar bears are the most vicious, bloodthirsty bears there are on the face of the earth. And there's going to be plenty of scares to come from them as well. And on top of that, you have this fantastic story. It's very, very emotional. You really feel for this woman because of what happened to her. But just like in any good revenge story, like she is going to show no mercy whatsoever when she goes out to seek her revenge. And this one gets bloody. Great atmosphere, great pacing. I absolutely loved it. And of course, I highly recommend it. And there is a link down below where you can pick up your copy in the description. And next we have The Hand of Iris. I want to thank Linda Ann over on Blue Sky for recommending this book to me in the first place. And this one's really great because it reads like an anthology. It's got 8 different very horrific stories, but they're all set against the backdrop of one major narrative, one main narrative throughout. And I really like that kind of thing. I've been reading a few books like that, and it really, really works. And it's about a woman and her girlfriend, and she's meeting her girlfriend's family for the first time. They're kind of well off. They live in a big house. And when she gets there, like all of her relatives are there. All of her girlfriend's relatives are there. And they seem like a pretty odd bunch. And one of the traditions they have is to tell stories to each other, these horrific stories. And each of the 8 stories in here is going to be told from a different family member. And some of them are going to seem to connect back to her simply because she has an ulterior motive for being there. And it seems like her family can kind of see through that. But they don't come right out and say it at first, but you can tell that there's a lot of tension between her and her family members about her true motives. And as the night goes on and she meets more of these quirky, weird family members, and this house that seems to be a labyrinth and easily get lost in, we're going to find out that she does have an ulterior motive. And when they're found out, well, it's not going to end well for her. But in the meantime, they're telling these horrific stories, really building the atmosphere, really building the terror and the tension. And it's just great. And it all has to do with this one treasure in the house that is worth a fortune. And of course, she wants to get her hands on it, but you're going to have to read about how that turns out. But even the stories in here, set apart from the main narrative, are extremely, extremely terrifying, very bloody, very creepy. And the whole package just comes together when you have this overforming arc, or this like umbrella arc about this woman and her girlfriend and meeting her family and having that ulterior motive and everything. It's just great. Absolutely loved it, of course. And yes, I do recommend it. And there is a link down below where you can pick up your copy. And as always, I want to say thank you for taking some of your time and spending it here with me. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.